Happy Tuesday and welcome in. I'm Ed O'Keefe in for Major Garrett. This is The Takeout. As reports out of Iran suggest the situation there is much more violent than initially thought, President Trump is threatening to take, quote, very strong action if authorities there begin hanging anti-government protesters this week, as is feared. And the president acknowledges there's a pretty substantial number of people who've been killed in more than 2 weeks of demonstrations against the regime. His comments come as sources tell CBS News the situation appears much more violent and deadly than initially thought. At least 12,000 people are believed to be dead, but that death toll could be much higher. CBS News has not been able to independently verify the death toll. Images out of the countries you see there show rows of body bags. The president spoke out on what the U.S. might do in Iran in an exclusive interview with CBS News taped this afternoon in Detroit with CBS Evening News anchor Tony DeCopel. Here's part of their conversation.
Americans woke up this morning and they saw that you said help is on the way.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's a lot of help on the way and in different forms, including economic help from our standpoint, and not going to help Iran very much. And, you know, we put Iran out of business with their nuclear capacity, and now, depending on what's actually happening, nobody's been able to give us accurate numbers about how many people they've killed.
Well, on that point,
it looks
Mr.
like
President,
it could be a pretty substantial number, and that's going to be a lot of problems for them.
A lot of problems. On that point, you did say the U.S. would get involved if Iran started killing protesters.
Yeah.
They have, by the many thousands, according to reports.
Well, we'll see what that is. I've heard two numbers, but we'll see what that is.
Well, now we're hearing that they're going to start hanging protesters tomorrow. So it comes back to the question, have they crossed your red line, or has the line moved?
I haven't heard about the hanging. If they hang them, you're going to see some things that I don't know what where you come from and what your thought process is, but you'll perhaps be very happy.
What do you mean by that?
We will take very strong action. If they do such a thing, we will take very strong action.
And this strong action you're talking about, what's the end game?
The end game is to win. I like winning.
How do you define that in Iran?
Well, let's define it in Venezuela. Let's define it with al-Baghdadi. He was wiped out. Let's define it with Soleimani. And let's define it in Iran, where he wiped out their Iran nuclear threat in a period of about 15 minutes once the B-2s got there. And that was a complete obliteration, as it turns out, which is what I said initially. Then some questioned it, and they said, you know, Trump was right. So we've been right about everything. We don't want to see what's happening in Iran happen. And, you know, if they want to have protests, that's one thing. When they start killing thousands of people, and now you're telling me about hanging, we'll see how that works out for them. It's not going to work out good.
You can watch the rest of Tony's exclusive interview with President Trump tonight on the CBS Evening News at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS. For more on the situation in Iran, CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer joins us now. Liz, great to see you. You know, all day we've been hearing or reading reports on widely varying figures on the number of dead or injured inside Iran. What is CBS News' latest understanding of the death toll, and how should we interpret these videos of body bags that we've seen?
One opposition television station has said 12,000, according to their collation of numbers. One of my contacts inside Iran said that human rights groups across the country are trying to talk to each other and pull together their numbers from various cities, and they think maybe 20,000. We may never know, but certainly it appears more people have been killed in these protests than during any big uprising since the revolution in 1979. The body bags, the video showing that place, which has been verified, it's the medical examiner's compound in Tehran. And it appears that on Friday night, many people were killed, and at least 350, possibly 400 bodies were taken there and just laid out in the courtyard so families could come and identify their loved ones. That video was smuggled out of the country. It does appear to be very accurate, and in those bodies you can see people have died from bullet wounds.
I want to underscore something you said, though, because I'm sure a viewer heard you say it and couldn't quite believe it. Some of these groups think as many as 20,000 people may have been killed in recent days as part of these protests.
That's right, and we know that there were big protests in Tehran, but there are many big cities in Iran: Shiraz, Isfahan, Mashhad, and we know they had enormous protests there. And the human rights groups can't really talk to each other at the moment because the internet is still shut down, so it's cumbersome. But when they bring their numbers together, the pessimists among them are saying 20,000.
Now, you said that the opposition television channels, at least, are talking about this death toll, and apparently state television as well has acknowledged this. What else are we hearing beyond the work of human rights groups about what's going on inside the country?
We've managed to talk to people on the phone today. We hear that Tehran is absolutely blanketed with security, police and paramilitaries. People are going about their business but keeping their heads down. Universities are closed. Schools are closed. The rather ludicrous reason, official reason, is that it's to save energy and because the air pollution is too bad, but of course nobody believes that. And security forces are stopping young people on the streets and searching them physically and then demanding to see their phones and looking for any photographs or social media that would indicate that they were part of the protests. And if they were, they're being carted off to jail. Now, one contact told me he'd witnessed a tiny protest spring up on a street corner, and the kids involved in that were calling death to the dictator, and they went a step further and actually said death to Khamenei, the supreme leader. It took about 15 seconds before the police arrived from several directions on scooters, and they had to run away as fast as they could. He said he didn't see any of them being arrested, but it's very high-risk activity right now.
Absolutely. And of course, this blackout makes it really difficult to know for sure. But we appreciate that the simple work of journalism of picking up the phone and figuring out what the heck is going on was being done by you today, and for you for sharing it with us. Elizabeth Palmer in London, tracking it all. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And for a little more perspective, let's turn to CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd, who's here with us in studio. There have been reports in the last day or so that the president's considering now a wide range of options when it comes to Iran. There's diplomacy, there's military operations, there's cyber operations, and then psyops operations, or the psychological sort of attempts to destabilize the regime. What do you make of the fact that this is apparently happening? And what are those meetings usually like? You've been involved in stuff like this before.
Well, even when the regime isn't massacring protesters, presidents, in my experience, are typically viewed on all options so that they can actually say all options are on the table to effectuate a certain goal in Iran. Now, fast forward to a situation where there is the mass massacre of unarmed protesters across the country, and it's smart that the president is being regularly briefed on the options. I hope, Ed, he's also being briefed on the intelligence behind what's actually going to achieve the United States' desired end state, because it seems like there's two goals here: end the violence against the protesters, but also get Iran to abandon its nuclear program and ultimately perhaps push the regime out of power. And those are two different goals. They may be complementary. And so I hope that the president is listening to the intelligence on what's going to help get him to those points.
And if we're getting public reports or through human rights groups the idea that as many as 20,000 people may have been killed in 16 days, and he suggests to Tony DeCopel in the interview today that it's a pretty substantial figure, undoubtedly this means the intelligence agencies have some handle on this and are telling him, we're talking 5 figures dead, many more potentially injured or detained over the course of these last few days, right?
Yeah, I would assume these intelligence briefings are giving him updates on the actual situation on the ground, a sitrep, a situation report, number of dead, regime plans, military and security forces, where they're positioning. But also the intelligence should be guiding him, giving insights onto what could actually, for example, get the regime to stop massacring protesters. And ultimately, Ed, what is going to convince members of the IRGC and members of the intelligence services to switch sides? How are those defections going to be effectuated? And that's the linchpin of how to effectuate regime change. We may see a mix of tools being used in the days ahead. Now, President Trump set a red line in this case. If lethal force is used, we're going to meet it. That's been passed. That's a problem with red lines. Now hanging, he's telling our colleague Tony DeCouple, may be the next red line. So we should expect something, and it may be a combination of covert action, military strikes, influence operations, and other tools in the toolkit.
And when he says things like, you know, we're going to take action, it's going to be very strong, how is that potentially being perceived by the Iranian leadership? Well, do they take it as a hollow threat, or do they go, oh, he means it?
Oh, I think they believe it. I mean, he's clearly demonstrated both the intent and capability to strike within Iran. So he means it. But it's a balance here. And this is, I don't want to take everything back to intelligence, but intelligence really matters. What is going to put enough pressure on the regime that they're scared enough to credibly talk to the United States? And what's going to rally folks around the regime and the security services and intelligence services against the great Satan, against the United States, so that they stay loyal? And that's where intel should be guiding what's coming out of the president's mouth and what public messaging is out of the administration more broadly.
I suspect your former colleagues who do this kind of work are not sleeping much these days.
Probably
between
very
Venezuela,
busy.
Iran, everything else, right?
If they're still there.
Yeah. Sam Vinograd, good to see you again as always. We appreciate it.